What if the greatest shifts in human history didn't begin with answers, but with questions? Questions so powerful they shattered old certainties and forced us to see the world differently. The dialectic, born in the streets of ancient Athens, has shaped how we think, how we argue, and how we evolve. From Socrates to Hegel, from Plato's cave to revolutions in science and society, it has driven humanity forward. But in an age of algorithms, echo chambers, and collapsing trust, have we forgotten how to think this way? Have we lost the art of true dialogue? In this episode of The Lantern's Glow, we follow the thread of the dialectic, from its ancient roots to its modern urgency, to uncover why tension, contradiction, and curiosity might just be our most powerful tools for shaping the future. Let's step into the conversation and see where it leads. All is one.
All right, let's kick this off with a big question. How do we actually know what we know?
Boof, straight into it. That's a big one. But I guess that's exactly the kind of question that's at the heart of what we're talking about today, the dialectic.
Right. And one of the oldest and most famous expressions of this idea comes from Socrates, who supposedly said, "All I know is that I know nothing." It sounds paradoxical, but it's actually a really profound insight.
Yeah, because what he's saying isn't, I don't know anything at all, but rather, the key to real knowledge is understanding that our current knowledge is always limited, always incomplete. And that's where the dialectic comes in. It's the process of questioning and challenging what we think we know.
Exactly. Socrates did this through dialogue. He would ask people questions, expose contradictions in their thinking, and push them toward deeper understanding. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about refining ideas through discussion.
And that's what became the Socratic method, which is still used today across Western societies.
Yeah, and the dialectic is basically the idea that knowledge isn't static. It evolves. We refine our understanding by questioning, debating, and challenging assumptions.
It's been at the heart of Western thought for over 2,000 years, and it all goes back to this one guy, Socrates.
The original troublemaker. Socrates went around ancient Athens asking people tricky questions, exposing contradictions in their thinking, and basically making everyone uncomfortable. And that's where his famous line comes in, "All I know is that I know nothing."
Which, to be fair, sounds like something a guy says when he hasn't done his homework.
True, but in Socrates' case, it was actually the foundation of Western philosophy. Because what he meant was that true wisdom comes from recognizing your own ignorance. If you think you already have all the answers, you stop questioning. And if you stop questioning, you stop progressing.
But later, Hegel took this a step further with his idea of the dialectical process, which works like this: thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Right. So you start with a dominant idea or belief, thesis. Then someone challenges it with an opposing perspective, antithesis, and from that clash, a more refined understanding emerges, synthesis. It's basically how progress happens.
And that's where the dialectic comes in. It's the process of debate, argument, and refinement that leads to better ideas. It's the basis of science, philosophy, democracy, law, and even journalism.
So, this isn't just some abstract philosophy thing. It's literally how Western democracies function. Think about it. Law courts? Prosecutors and defense lawyers argue opposing sides, and the jury or judge decides what's true.
Parliament? Governments propose policies, opposition parties challenge them, and at least in theory, you get better policies.
The media? Journalists ask tough questions, expose contradictions, and refine public understanding.
Education? The whole idea is that students challenge ideas, not just memorize them.
Yeah, in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. But here's the problem. Are we actually engaging in dialectical thinking today, or are we just shouting at each other?
Good question. Because for the dialectic to work, you have to be willing to change your mind. But modern politics and media often feel like the opposite. People dig in their heels, defend their beliefs at all costs, and refuse to listen to opposing views.
Right. Instead of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, we get thesis, Twitter war, nothing changes.
Exactly. And look, this isn't new. Throughout history, Every major idea that challenged the status quo faced resistance.
And it's not just philosophy. This process has shaped history. Think about the Copernican revolution. The thesis was that Earth was the center of the universe. Then Copernicus and Galileo came along with the antithesis, saying, no, actually, the Earth orbits the sun. That shift completely changed how we saw ourselves in the universe.
It created a paradigm shift from one understanding to another.
Same with Darwin. For thousands of years, people believed humans were created separately from animals. Darwin's theory of evolution flipped that upside down. And again, there was resistance before the idea became accepted.
And we're still doing it today. Every time a new scientific discovery or social change challenges an old way of thinking, people push back. Whether it's AI, climate change, or economic systems, we cling to familiar ideas because they feel safe.
But history shows us that progress only happens when we challenge those ideas.
So today we're asking, are we still capable of true dialectical thinking? Are we actually open to debate, or just stuck in echo chambers, our ideological bubbles, just reinforcing what we already believe instead of actually questioning things?
And if Socrates were alive today, would he be on a podcast or getting canceled on social media? So today, let's explore what the dialectic really is, how it has shaped the world, and whether we're still engaging with it or resisting it.
Yeah, because if we've learned anything from history, it's that progress only happens when we're willing to challenge ourselves. Let's get into it.
So, Plato, Hegel, and Karl Marx have shaped our way of talking that shapes our philosophy, politics, and even how we argue on the internet with dialectics.
Sounds deep. But also, isn't dialectics just a fancy word for arguing?
Not quite. It's about how ideas evolve through contradiction. Imagine every strong idea meeting its opposite. Instead of canceling each other out, they merge into something new, like a battle that creates progress.
So, tension isn't just conflict. It's fuel for thinking.
Exactly. And dialectics isn't just for philosophers. We see it everywhere, in science, history, politics, even pop culture.
Give me an example.
Sure. Think about technology. One side argues that AI is going to revolutionize everything for the better. Thesis. Another says it will steal jobs and destroy humanity. Antithesis. And then we get an evolving middle ground, where AI is used responsibly with regulation. Synthesis. The same happens in politics, with debates on capitalism versus socialism, or in ethics, where free speech clashes with misinformation concerns.
So, dialectics is how we wrestle with ideas and move forward?
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into the thinkers who define this process and how dialectical thinking can help us navigate today's chaotic world. Plus, we'll look at how dialectics isn't just about old philosophers. It's about how we think, argue, and make sense of contradictions every day.
So, we're starting with Plato, because, well, of course we are.
The guy basically invented Western philosophy. But he wasn't just a deep thinker, he was also a master of asking impossible questions until his students were forced to think harder.
That sounds like every annoying professor ever.
Exactly. Plato's approach, known as dialectic, was all about exploring contradictions in thought. His dialogues, especially in the Republic and Theaetetus, demonstrate this process. He asks, what is justice? What is knowledge? But instead of giving straight answers, he leads his students in a back-and-forth exploration of these concepts.
So, he wasn't just giving lectures, he was guiding people to discover contradictions in their own thinking.
Exactly. One of his most famous exercises in dialectics is the allegory of the cave. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave, seeing only shadows on the wall. To them, that's reality. But if one prisoner escapes and sees the real world, everything changes.
So, reality isn't what it seems, and learning is about confronting contradictions?
Plato's whole point was that truth isn't static. It emerges through questioning, challenging assumptions, and seeing beyond the obvious.
Okay, so Plato says knowledge is shaped by questioning.
That's right. But then along comes Kant, who asks, can we ever truly know anything?
How so?
So we've been talking about the dialectic, the idea that progress happens when opposing ideas clash and evolve. But what if I told you that contradictions aren't just something that happens in society, they're actually built into reason itself?
Oof. That sounds like a Kant problem.
Haha, yeah, exactly. Immanuel Kant tackled this in the Critique of Pure Reason, where he pointed out something really interesting. Our own reason generates contradictory ideas.
Yeah, he called them antinomies, right? Basically, he showed that for certain big metaphysical questions, you can make a totally rational argument for one side and an equally rational argument for the opposite side.
Right. Like, take the first one, does the universe have a beginning, or has it always existed? If it had a beginning, what came before it? But if it's infinite, how did we ever get to this point in time?
So no matter which side you choose, you run into a paradox.
Exactly. Kant's whole point was that reason alone can't solve these kinds of questions because it keeps generating opposites. But I want to dig into one of Kant's trickiest contradictions, the third antinomy, free will versus determinism. This one goes straight to the core of what it means to be human.
Yeah, this is the classic, are we actually making choices? Or is everything predetermined debate? And Kant basically says both.
Right. So here's how he lays it out. Thesis: humans have free will. We can act independently of physical cause and effect, making decisions that aren't just determined by prior events. Antithesis: everything in nature, including human behavior, is governed by cause and effect, meaning our actions are completely determined by prior conditions.
Which is kind of terrifying, because if determinism is true, then every decision we make was already set in motion by previous causes, our biology, our upbringing, the state of the universe at the moment of our birth.
Yeah, it turns life into one giant domino effect. Like, I didn't actually choose to have this conversation. I was just biologically and environmentally conditioned into doing it.
And yet, we feel like we have free will. Like, if I suddenly decide to start speaking in a terrible French accent, that feels like a choice, right?
Oui, monsieur. But here's the thing, Kant's argument isn't about proving one side is right. He's saying that both free will and determinism make sense, depending on how you look at it.
Okay, explain.
So Kant distinguishes between two perspectives on reality. One, phenomenal world, the world of experience. Everything follows cause and effect, like physics, chemistry, and, presumably, our brain activity. Two, noumenal world, the thing in itself. This is reality beyond what we can experience. Here, he argues, free will might exist, but we can never fully grasp it.
So in the world we observe, everything seems determined. But in some deeper, unknowable way, free will could still be real?
Yeah, Kant's basically saying that free will isn't something we can prove scientifically. It's something we experience as moral agents.
That's why he ties this to ethics. Like, if we didn't have free will, we couldn't be held responsible for anything. Morality would be meaningless.
Exactly. If you steal something, but your actions were 100% determined by your past experiences and biology, can we really say you're guilty? That's why Kant argues that for morality to work, we have to act as if free will is real, even if we can't prove it.
So he's kind of making a practical argument for free will?
Yep. Even if determinism is technically true, we still have to live as if we have free will, because that's the only way we can function as moral beings.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And it kind of explains why this debate never gets resolved, because both perspectives are valid in different contexts.
Exactly. Which brings us back to the dialectic. Maybe the reason we keep debating free will versus determinism is that we're never going to get a final answer. Instead, the clash of these ideas keeps pushing us toward deeper questions.
Okay, so if even reason contradicts itself, what does that mean for, like, everything? Like how this debate plays out in neuroscience, AI, and even the legal system. Because if science keeps pointing toward determinism, how do we handle things like justice and punishment?
Great question. It means that the dialectic isn't just something that happens in debates, it's baked into the way human thought works. We naturally swing between opposing ideas, whether it's in philosophy, politics, science, or even our own beliefs.
And that explains why we keep going through these cycles in history. Like, one generation believes in absolute truth, then the next one questions everything. Or society swings between valuing individual freedom versus collective responsibility.
Exactly. And it also explains why democracy, law courts, and science all rely on dialectical thinking, because there's no single final truth. Instead, progress happens through questioning, debate, and refining ideas over time.
Okay, so let's connect this to the modern world. If contradictions are unavoidable, does that mean we're stuck in endless debates forever? Or is there a way to actually resolve these tensions?
Great question. Kant's answer was basically, stay in your lane. He argued that we should accept the limits of human reason and focus on experience and evidence instead of trying to grasp absolute truths. But Hegel and Marx took a different approach, saying that contradictions drive history forward.
So next, let's explore that, how these contradictions play out in politics, science, and even AI and modern technology. Because if we're in the middle of a dialectical process right now, what's the next big shift?
So we need to look at Hegel, Adorno, and the spiral of history.
Hegel. I've heard his work is like wading through philosophical quicksand.
That's fair. Hegel is notorious for dense writing, but his main idea is actually simple. History isn't linear. It moves through contradictions.
That sounds a lot like Plato's idea of societies falling apart because of their own contradictions.
Exactly. Hegel takes it further with the dialectical process, the famous thesis, antithesis, synthesis model. An idea, thesis, meets its opposite, antithesis, and out of that clash, something new emerges, synthesis. But here's the kicker. The synthesis becomes the new thesis, and the cycle repeats.
So, human thought is basically a never-ending spiral of aha moments?
Precisely. And Hegel applies this to history, showing how each stage of society builds upon contradictions in the previous one. This is what he calls the phenomenology of spirit, human consciousness evolving through history.
That reminds me of the misconception we have that the Earth just goes round and round the sun, like a planet on a racetrack, repeating the same loop every year.
Right. But in reality, the sun is also moving, orbiting the center of the Milky Way. So Earth isn't just circling in place, it's spiraling forward through space, like a corkscrew.
Exactly. We're not retracing the same path. Each year we're in a new position in the galaxy. That old image of repetition, going around in circles, misses the bigger picture.
And Hegel would say the same thing about history. It might feel like we're stuck in cycles, war, peace, progress, collapse, but history doesn't repeat itself exactly. It spirals.
Each turn brings us back to similar themes, but at a different level, a new context, a new synthesis. It's not just déjà vu, it's development. But wait, that makes it sound like progress is inevitable. What happens when we mess things up?
Great question. Hegel believed that even mistakes contribute to progress. Every failed system contains the seeds of its own destruction and also the seeds for something new.
So even our mistakes are just stepping stones to a more advanced way of thinking?
Exactly. But not everyone agreed with this optimistic view.
Enter Theodor Adorno.
Right. Adorno was part of the Frankfurt School, a group of 20th century philosophers who thought Hegel was a little too optimistic. While Hegel saw contradictions as fueling progress, Adorno thought some contradictions just keep us stuck, and he wasn't a fan of these sweeping historical narratives. He argued that attempts to fit everything into a neat dialectical process risk ignoring the messy, unpredictable nature of reality.
So, he's saying that sometimes things don't follow a tidy pattern?
Exactly. Adorno's negative dialectics argues that we should always question our own frameworks, even dialectics itself. He was especially wary of how powerful ideologies use these structures to justify oppression.
So Adorno was like, beware of systems that claim to explain everything because they might just be ways to control you.
Pretty much. And his skepticism is super relevant today, especially when we see political and media narratives that try to oversimplify complex issues.
Give me an example.
Adorno argued that modern capitalism, for example, doesn't resolve contradictions, it just papers over them. Instead of capitalism collapsing under its own weight, like Marx predicted, it adapts. People are distracted by entertainment, advertising, and consumerism, what Adorno called the culture industry.
So instead of fighting back, we binge watch Netflix and buy more gadgets?
Exactly. Adorno thought modern society neutralizes dialectical progress. Instead of contradictions leading to change, they get absorbed into an endless loop of consumption.
So how do we break free from that loop?
Adorno's answer was critical thinking, constantly questioning systems of power and refusing to take reality at face value.
Which sounds kind of dialectical in itself.
You got it. Even the critique of dialectics is dialectical. Now, before we go any further, a quick note. The name Marx can stir up strong feelings, especially in the West, where it's often associated with Cold War politics or failed revolutions. But what we're exploring here isn't dogma. It's the thinking, the method behind his analysis of history. You can disagree with his conclusions, but there's value in understanding how he saw the world.
So we're not waving any red flags?
Only the flag of curiosity.
Hegel sees history as this evolving dialectic. Adorno warns about stagnation, but Marx says, let's take action.
Exactly. Marx flips Hegel on his head. Instead of history being driven by ideas, Marx says it's driven by material forces, things like labor, money, and power, specifically class struggle.
So instead of philosophical debates moving history forward, Marx says society evolves through economic struggle?
Right. Marx's historical materialism argues that economic systems shape societies, and every society has a ruling class that controls wealth and power, the means of production, and a working class that struggles under them.
And remember, this isn't about blaming individuals, it's about seeing systems. Marx's lens isn't about hating the rich or glorifying the poor, it's about understanding how economic systems shape the roles we play, often without us even realizing.
Marx argued that capitalism, while innovative, is also inherently unstable. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and eventually, the contradictions become unbearable. It creates wealth, but also extreme inequality.
And Marx predicted capitalism would collapse under its own contradictions? Because the inequalities become too much to bear?
Yes, but here's where it gets interesting. Marx believed that revolution wouldn't just happen automatically. People have to recognize the contradictions, organize, and actively push history forward. Marx believed that eventually, the working class, proletariat, would rise up, overthrow the capitalist class, bourgeoisie, and create a classless society, communism. Now that last word, communism, it's loaded, no question. But Marx's original idea wasn't necessarily the authoritarian regimes we later saw. His vision was of a more equal, cooperative society. Whether or not that's realistic is a huge debate, but it's important to separate the ideas from how they've been interpreted or used over time.
But that didn't exactly go as planned in history, did it? Capitalism is still here.
That's why Marx remains so controversial.
So even Marx himself becomes part of the dialectic. Reinterpreted, debated, reimagined across generations.
Exactly. These ideas aren't meant to be final answers. They're provocations, lenses that help us see what might otherwise stay hidden. And whether we agree or disagree, the real value lies in the questions they help us ask about the systems we live in and how we might live differently. Some say he underestimated capitalism's ability to adapt. Others argue that Marx's ideas were distorted by later communist regimes.
So, the dialectic continues?
Exactly. Even Marx's theories evolve through contradiction.
After all this philosophy, what's the big takeaway for today's world? Why should I care about dialectics today?
Because dialectical thinking is a survival skill in today's information age.
Okay, explain.
Think about social media. It's full of black and white, either or thinking. People pick sides and dig in their heels instead of considering contradictions and complexity.
So, dialectics helps us escape that echo chamber mentality?
Exactly. It teaches us to see the nuance, the tension, the contradictions that actually move ideas forward. Instead of thinking, this idea is right and that one is wrong, dialectics encourages us to ask, what's the contradiction here? And what new understanding can emerge from it?
That sounds useful. What about in politics?
Oh, absolutely. Take democracy, it thrives on dialectical tension. Different viewpoints clash, and ideally, through debate, a better policy emerges. But when debate stops being dialectical and just becomes reactionary, progress stalls.
So, embracing dialectics means being open to the idea that even people we disagree with might have a point?
Exactly. And it's not just politics. Science, economics, even personal growth all operate dialectically. We constantly challenge old ideas, learn from mistakes, and refine our understanding.
So, instead of seeing contradictions as problems, we should see them as opportunities?
Now you're getting it. Dialectics isn't just an abstract theory. It's a way of thinking that helps us navigate a complex, ever-changing world.
And even the series of podcasts that we are doing now, The Lanterns Glow, is all done in a dialectic method, 2 conversations.
You are so right. That's part of why these Lanterns Glow episodes are in a podcast format. The dialectic is expressed through our conversation.
That's fantastic. Really great.
Keep questioning, keep evolving, and don't be afraid of contradiction. It's where new ideas are born.
I think that's the most dialectical conclusion we could have reached.
Agreed. Until next time, stay curious. All is one.
The dialectic isn't just a relic of philosophy. It's alive in every moment we dare to question, to listen, and to hold opposing truths at once. Progress has never come from certainty. It comes from tension, from standing in the discomfort of not knowing and daring to seek what lies beyond it. If we're willing to embrace contradiction instead of resisting it, we open the door to deeper understanding of ourselves, each other, and the systems we live within. So if something in this episode left you unsettled, stay with it. Lean in. Discomfort often means you're brushing against the edges of your current understanding. And that's where growth begins. Let the glow of the lantern guide you. And if you found value here, share this episode, join the conversation, and stay curious. Until next time, all is one.